So I got a Slack from a colleague of mine today, and he asked, what are some things that I can do to improve my conversion rate from the demo stage to closing the deal? So here's what I shared with him. I said, there's really kind of two things that you can do to make sure that you manage the deal cycle in a way that you can help influence the outcome. You can never fully influence the outcome as a seller. You are at the mercy of the buyer in their evaluation process. But these are two things that you can do to make sure you've covered your bases, and they're things that your manager might ask you about. So let's dig in here. What I told him was you've got to set next steps. This is not new. Everyone knows that this is one of the most important parts about selling is that at the end of every conversation with a buyer, you've got to establish what the next step is. Now, it's not as simple as just asking for next steps or asking the prospect what they think the next step should be. You have to actually propose what that next step is. And you need to use this as an opportunity to position yourself as a consultant to this prospect and an advisor to the prospect. You want to show them that you can guide them through the buying process, the project itself. And so one way to do that is asking for that next step, and not just asking for it again, but proposing what that next step would look like based on other deals that have been done at your company and other customers who've successfully navigated this process at your company. So how do you do that? This brings me to the second thing that I shared, which was implementing a close plan. I've talked about this on the podcast before. In fact, I have a template for close plans that I'm going to share in the show notes, but it's basically a project milestone document that backs into where you are now from where you need to get to. And in most cases, for most buyers, that's the go live. When do they go live with your product, your software, your solution? And how do we walk backwards from that point in time to now and define every single milestone that has to happen on both sides? My side as the seller and their side as the buyer. Who does what? Who needs to see a demo before we can advance to the next stage? What paperwork has to get looked at? Is there a security evaluation that needs to be reviewed? Is there legal documentation that needs to be established? What is each and every step that you need to go through? And how do you put goals around each of those milestones being achieved with a specific date? So what I typically do and how this sounds at the end of a demo is I might say, great, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, thank you for an engaging demo session today. Before we finish the call, I'd like to set up a 15-minute follow-up call in the next couple of days where we can go through a mutual action plan. And this is something that our most successful customers have implemented to navigate this evaluation process. And it helps keep the two of us on the same page so we can manage this project together and ultimately get to the signature outcome. Now, what's great about close plans is if they're not a serious buyer, they're not going to agree to that meeting. And then you kind of know that it's not a real deal and you can qualify it out and move on to the next one. But if they agree to take that meeting and you spend 15, 20, 30 minutes working with them to plot out every step that it's going to take in order to get a signature on an order form, you're going to close that deal. So I hope that helps someone out there. Next steps, always be asking for them. Every call has to have a next step. And it's best if you propose that next step. Show your expertise, show you've guided another customer through this process before, and implement a mutual action plan or a close plan. Document every step that it's going to take to get the deal done and be as specific as possible. Assign it out to specific people on the buyer team. Include people on your side like your solutions consultants, your security team, etc. But be very thorough with that. And if you can do that, you'll improve your conversion rates from demo to signed paperwork. Hope that helps.